One must realize the Buddha is only something to hold the attention. When the attention's there already and it's getting calm, it'll drop off of itself automatically.
That's what it is.
Don't try and hold on to it.
Then I felt I was staying with the feeling of the calm.
And you get the breath, feeling of the breath, and it's hardly there.
Yeah,
very difficult to recognize.
Then the breath came into appearance.
If you find the breath goes and you can't find it, keep your attention on the same place where you've been attending to. Keep your attention there, and you'll find it comes back again usually.
Right.
You become aware of it again. But eventually, if it goes to the point where it does actually stop, you'll probably be more into an absorbed state.
I could just feel a kind of fear creeping up, the kind of
that's right.
Coming into the attention with the breath, and feeling the breath being quite difficult for the breath to come in. I felt like the breath was really like the rate was reduced.
Yeah.
And then the fear came. And of course.
It's all right to stop breathing, provided you don't use any force. You do it by going calm. There's no harm. But if one uses any force at all, it's no good. Physiologically, what happens, I don't know. So I don't even want to worry about that. Body's quite capable of looking after itself.
So what should I do if it's arising fear, some anxiety?
Yeah.
I tried every time I tried to come back to to Buddha, basically.
Yeah. Reminds me of the thing I read. Somebody went to a festival in India. There were a lot of yogis at this festival, and there was a place there where there were yogis who were buried. But they left one arm out like this. And then this person went along, and what you were supposed to do is you put money in that hand. This person he saw one with the hand sticking out like this, and he put the money in it, and slowly it closed like this and went down. Really? And then it came out again like this and opened up. Not greedy.
Is he dead? Was he dead?
No, he's doing what they call the yoga thing that they can bury them.
Oh, I see.
I don't know whether it's complete fake or not. But they quite often, you might have a bit of space around where they breathe, and because they've been completely still, they don't need much oxygen. And they may get enough there, or they may have a tube somewhere else coming out. I can't see. Full water. Should be fake quite easily.
The Indians can do anything.
Yeah.
All the tricks.
Yeah. I thought it was a bit much.
And later, because I think through this trouble with having anxiety coming up, and I kind of slipped out of this state of samadhi.
Yeah.
I really felt awful. I felt like really the kind of loss of that happiness and the dukkha of that. And that didn't get me concentrated either.
If you come out like that, okay, you come out, never mind. Then review. If you feel lost like that, review the feeling of being lost. Just look at it, examine it, just look around and see. And the thing is, don't try to grab at anything. The thing is, when you feel lost like that, kilesa come up and you want to grab something to get security. The thing is, don't try and just hold it at that point. So while you hold it like that, the kilesas are not active. And it can be quite quiet and quite. It's also a point where one can learn a lot too. About the way the tendency is there to grab at the kilesas, or for the kilesas to come up and make one grab at something. This is quite frequently, whereas if one just holds back and so almost as though you say, no, I won't do that, I won't grab. I'll just leave it. And just watch it, watch the state. Examine it. If it feels a bit uncomfortable, okay, it feels uncomfortable. And examine it as it is. And it's alright, you learn quite a lot.
Because what came up when I came out, was the thought, oh, now I should investigate.
Yeah.
And I was, should I investigate, should I consider? This is kind of my mind.
I don't think what you should investigate. What you should investigate is what's there at the moment, whatever it is. It's as though one's been doing something, and then you just stand back and look at it to see what the situation is. Then you just stand back and watch it, without trying to do anything. It's as though you're watching and seeing what's the state, what state are you in. It's just as though you sort of stand back and look at it. It's just as though you're separate from it and watching. But the natural way we've always conditioned ourselves, when anything like that comes up, so where am I? Grab something. That comes up straight away. Then one is lost.
It has become a agenda thing. What should I do now?
No, even if there's nothing there, examine this nothing there. What is this nothing there? Is there really nothing there? Usually it isn't. The thing is, if one learns to do that, then one can learn gradually to be more and more mindful of one's situation and to more sit back and whatever comes up and knows it and watches it. And that's going towards a very, very good mindful state. You can just sit back and watch it like that, whatever it is, without trying to prescribe what's coming up now. In fact, really, that is the best state of practice, but normally we can't do it because the kilesas come up straight away. And because the kilesas come up, we have to have a parikamma to hold on to. But when more skill comes, one doesn't need that parikamma, one can go into a state where one just watches, that's all. What is the Dhammadinna? Where did it go?
The one who has anakami husband, I used to tell you.
Her husband came and asked her some questions. And he asked about feeling. What was unpleasant feelings? If I remember rightly, it's a long time since I read that. She said, unpleasant feeling are those states when there is a predominance of unpleasant feeling and a little bit of pleasant feeling. There's a lot of dukkha and a little sukha. He asked about what about where there's pleasant feeling. He said, those are those states where there's a predominance of pleasant feeling and a little bit of dukkha, unpleasant feeling. And he asked about where there's no feeling. And she said, where there's no feeling, when one doesn't understand and one still has ignorance, it's unpleasant. But when one has understanding, it's pleasant. In other words, the state where there's nothing there is a state which, when one still has avijja, one doesn't like it. But the person who understands, who's got through and can understand that, that's the right state.
This Desana tell us about the difference between the Anakami and Arahant.
I think it does. It's ages since I read it now. It's in the Majjhima Nikaya. I know that. But I can't say exactly where.
I think her husband came to ask. Her husband was an Anakami, and came to ask about the 5 kantas.
Oh yes.
And she's the one who told him that beyond 5 kanta there's avijja.
Yes.
There's still avijja to come.
Yes.
So he went right to the Buddha and told the story, and the Buddha said, if it were him, he would answer the same with your wife.
Yes.
He has become
Yes.
So that also tells, that also confirms whatท่านอาจารย์ said whenท่านอาจารย์ said about unattractiveness.
Yeah.
That when they finish 5 kantas, it's not yet enlightened fully and become an arahant.
Yes.
Because there was still a vision.
Kancha always says he says the Unattractiveness Sutta is unfinished, but the Jita Pariyaya Sutta, the fire setting, that's complete. I can't remember exactly. There's a difference there, and I can't remember how it goes now. I did look it up one time. It's something like the Adita Pariyaya Sutta says what you should do after that thing.
After what?
After seeing the way that everything's on 4 or 5 khandhas are on fire. And when one sees it, it tells one what one should do more or less. Whereas the Unattractiveness Sutta, when one sees them all as being anatta, it stops there. It doesn't tell you the rest of it.
He told about the 5 kantas, and then when they saw all the 5 kantas as anatta, it must go on to come right into the heart.
Yes.
And be born of the citta.
Yeah.
Because it's still there, which are still there.
Yes, it's still there.
So it must be concluded in other sutras, just like the Lakhana Sutta or Thammaniyam. It was concluded as Sapphe Sankhara Anicca, Sapphe Dhamma Anatta. And if these 2 verses are added, and then the Anattalakkhana Sutta will be complete. But for the Atitta Kaliya Sutta, it's just like the 6 senses. And then when the Buddha told them, the hermit became bored of and salat.
Yeah, but there's something
until the heart, and then there's salat into the heart.
It says something there, and it completes it. But I can't remember exactly how it goes.
Because they went right into the heart. Mano Sampat. Anything you think.
Yes.
Mano Sampat.
But I haven't. Long time since I saw it. The Kanachan said about the suttas, the one, he says that it's all there, the teaching's all there, but the trouble is to be able to see it. The interpretation is difficult. It would seem almost certain that there's been a lot of editing in the Stupidika. The parts one can see are correct. First of all, where there's things that are put often, they're probably correct. But they may not be complete. Nowhere, as far as I know, does it really say what is the difference between Samadhi and Jhana. It talks a lot about jhana. It's very difficult to know exactly what's meant by it. The thing is, if you look at the first jhana in particular, the factors that make up the first jhana, they're the same factors as you have in samadhi. So what's the difference? The difference must be internal in that case, inside. And they come up in entirely different ways. This can be too. And as far as I can see, the factors of samadhi and the factors of jhana are not different. After all, apana samadhi, the way you get into the heart, and there's nothing left, there's just knowing there. Well, that sounds from the writer, from what's written there, it's the same as fourth jhana. It's a description of the characteristics there, it's the same.
So maybe it's
different in explanation.
I don't know. The thing is, I think it goes more to it than that. There's the approach to it, which is quite different, I think.
A different approach.
Yes.
For the first thing, and the other maybe for the jhana they require something more in order to become a Brahmin. I mean, if they die in the jhana, they would, after death they would become a Brahmin.
Yeah.
That's why the Buddha said it's not necessary for Buddhists.
Certainly, yes, as Tanachan puts it, he says it's only necessary for those people who have that faculty. People who have the faculty of jhana, and it's just natural to them, they must go that way. But somebody who hasn't, they shouldn't try and develop it. That's the way.
I have a tesana, Ajahn Chun tesana on this. I will copy it for you, but it's handwriting. I have to type up so that you can read.
I know, he seemed to, a lot of it's printed in his handwriting, some of the things that he's written. I've got something there that's printed in his handwriting.
Oh.
It's awfully difficult to read, I think.
Can you read handwriting? No.
Well, I can, but it's a slow job.
I would try to type it up. Try to find. I have to type my handwriting. It's very. But Ajahn Chun just twist it into the jhana and samadhi in Buddhism. That the Buddha taught us to jhana in Buddhism is to concentrate. He played the word concentration of the jhana. The meaning of jhana is concentration. Concentrate on inside rather than outside. Outside is a jhana. Inside is Buddhist way, the Buddhist way. Until you understand what's inside, both body and mind. But there's a detail of that.
Etymologically, jhana comes from the word to know or to think, I'm not sure which. Something like that. And I don't know, I keep a very open mind on the meaning of jhana. Tanachan generally doesn't like talking about jhana unless it's with somebody who has got experience. He says, no, I can't talk about this unless the person knows what you're talking about. And he never talks openly about jhana. If he talks about jhana, he just sticks exactly to what the sutras say. That's all.
Ajahn Chun too. He said that jhana outside Buddhism is just for the Brahmin.
Yeah.
It has been before the day of the Buddha, but it's just for the benefit of those who want to become a Brahmin after death. Several levels of Brahmin. It's also said in the Traipum, the three worlds, the story of the three worlds. They say that those who die in the first jhana will become there are three levels of the first jhana, but to become in the Pratham jhana. Will be in the first three levels of Brahmin, up there in the Brahmin world. That's why Tanachan would say it's not necessary.
Altogether, I think there's 16 levels in the Rupa jhana. If I remember rightly. It comes in the Abhidhamma, the Chaitasikas, the different types of consciousness, the different forms of chitta. And the Chaitasikas are different.
It depends on the subtle of the jhana too. That even say the first jhana, for instance, there are three levels because there are three subtleties of the level.
I'm not sure how necessary it's to know anything much about that. I don't know. I mean,
but anyway, those anakami must be born in the Brahmins anyway, in Suttawat.
Yeah.
So it means that he must have a root jhana. Huh?
Yeah. And Philip Hobbes, he was a man who used to come here. He lived in Sweden. He was actually German. He was Jewish. They lived in England since before the war. And he not Sweden. He lived in Norway after the war. And he used to come. He used to go to Ajahn Tape, and he used to talk a lot about jhana. And one day he was talking to Ajahn about jhana. Anyway, he went. I said after Ajahn, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. I tell you, we always talk about jhana. I don't like it at all. That's what Ajahn said. He didn't like talking about it. It's the way he's kind of trying to say it. It's too personal to talk about to somebody who doesn't know what one's talking about. Whereas you can talk about samadhi, doesn't matter. That's external. That's much more external, much more a thing of the mind. The jhana is much deeper than that.
But if I understand you correctly, when you enter samadhi, there is unhappiness that is accompanying samadhi.
Unhappiness.
Unhappiness is a happiness.
Yes.
But it is, after a while, it disappears, huh?
Well, the happiness, the sukha, it's a quietness. The quietness is there. Well, if my understanding is right, jhana is much more dynamic.
Well, at least the first one, or the first two.
Yes.
And the fourth it drops completely.
Yes, I can't comment on that.
I think because the question about jhana must usually come from the Western people, because they learn about it from the Indians.
Yes.
That's why.
And from books as well.
From books.
From the Indian.
And Burmese.
In Burma
they talk about philosophy.
In Burma they teach the jhana with the four prana vihara.
Some people in Thailand talk about it, but the Acharyas from Thanachan Man and the others like Thanachan Kao, Thanachan Mahabho, Thanachan Sun, as far as I know, they never teach jhana. Not openly anyway. They might teach it to some specific people, individually. That's another matter. But openly they never teach it.
I think it's because that if this is not important for those who want to be on the path.
Yes, it's not a general teaching with you, because it's only specific people who are capable. Yes? That's what it comes to. Whereas samadhi is open to anybody.
But it's a little bit contrary to the suttas, because at least in the Madhyama, nearly in every sutta, he's talking about first jhana up to the fourth jhana and then contemplation.
What depends on which sutta?
It does say meditation.
The only thing is, in those days...
Yes, he says jhana.
Oh, when Ajahn Chuan quoted about your quotation last time that those who have jhana is very near to Nibbana. Ajahn Chuan quoted the Pali verse and which say that includes panya too, not only jhana. Those who have jhana and panya.
No, they're not necessarily close to Nibbana, but somebody who goes the way of jhana must use that to go in their practice. So that's the way for them. But whether they're close or not will depend on what other relationships are. I would say they're necessarily close. But it's the old thing, everybody has to go along their own path. And although they're all heading in the same direction, paths are not all identical by any means.
Where would you actually put emotions? To the kilesas or khandhas?
No, the kilesas often use the emotions, but the emotions are not the kilesas. They're not the same thing at all. The emotions are really, they come up mainly in Sankhara Kanda. That's most of where the emotions are. What's difficult for us from the West, well I think not only us from the West, but Thai people as well, is to realize the center is the heart. And that is the active one. And that the emotions are much more the central thing that's happening. Now, then the emotions give rise to thought, speech or action. In other words, it springs out from here, it comes up from here, and then it goes out into thinking, speaking or acting physically. And this shows up that the thinking apparatus is much more like a pair of hands, it's something to do work with. It's the computer, if you like. But the computer isn't the person who's working the computer. Nor is the computer the one that has the purpose. Purpose is in the person using it. Now the person using it is down in the heart, so to speak. And the computer is the one that goes to work up there. It's difficult to get past the body imagery. Because we have physical bodies, we tend to get the idea that we're located up in the head. Probably because 4 of the 5 senses, the external senses, are up there. And the thinking seems to be up there. So we get the idea that most of what goes on up there. Whereas, really speaking, it's much more like the analogy of the television set. What you see is on the end of the tube. But the mechanism that's going on isn't there. What's going on? What's the source of it? And the important thing, that's just the display. And it's the same with us, the heart is the center really. And exactly where the processes are that go on doesn't really matter now. The actual mechanism.
What do you recommend how to work with difficult emotions? I mean, I had today, I could see what happened. And it took me completely away from Samadhi, what went on, and I tried to go back, first I tried to stay with the Buddha and just to neglect what was going on, and that didn't help. But led to some, so I was doing this, and then suddenly outburst of tears, and okay, I'll show you now. Okay, that just happened, it's powers of annoyance. That's fine. It's just, I found just a way of just seeing that actually impermanent. See that, but somehow I couldn't crack it. Couldn't somehow just not get involved in it somehow. In some sense, I could step somehow back and see it, letting it free. But somehow I couldn't just say, well.
too much attachment. clinging at the back. And the clinging is I am. That's what happens. And the thing is, although one's trying to break something there, who is the one that's trying to break it? And that one's trying to break it to that one's satisfaction. It shows that it's the I am getting at it all the time.
Yes, I could sense the sense of self being, but that didn't help. Just okay, I could recognize it, but it didn't help.
The only thing one can do in a case like that is just let it go on. Watch it. Don't watch it. That's about all you can do. Just watch it and see what happens. Don't try and alter things. It's one of the troubles really we have. We always try and change things. They're changing fast now anyway, but we want them to go our way, so to speak, and we always try and force them into our direction, the way we think they should go. And when we do that, because we're putting our finger in the pie, it's usually wrong. And the way we want them to go is the way the kilesas want them to go.
And it's just something because that's what I normally do. I let them, I watch them, but somehow what I'm not quite sure is that I'm not also develop somewhere kind of fixating them, making them, okay, this is now this emotion and it's coming and going, okay, but it is this emotion. Somewhere I feel I'm fixing something, I'm making something solid, and I'm not quite sure where I'm going. Instead of just...
We're riddled with symbols. We've got symbols in us for everything. And we've got symbols for our own emotional states. And we get a particular emotional state coming up, and we know it's that symbol. These symbols inside us, it's hard to define what they are. Often they're just feelings. But we know them all. We've got the symbol for it there. We put symbols onto everything. Externally, all the time. And when we say, oh, I've got it, and I know it, it means we've caught hold of a symbol. But we haven't caught hold of the thing that's happening there. What's happening there is most complex. And what one's got to see is almost like a whirlpool. Whirlpool of activity there. To realize that this is what's going on. And that if I try to change that, it will go the wrong way. It's bound to. If I just watch it, it's a nature, it will die in its own course. And one has to realize that there is almost a vortex of activity going on all the time within us, like that. So like a whirlpool going on. And we're sort of, we see this, but because we can't catch the complexity of it, we have to see it as something that we can catch hold of. We make a symbol for it. I mean, we've got, a motor car, that's a symbol. What is the thing? It's 100,000 different parts. But we could just put that one symbol onto it. A house, again, we've got all sorts of bits and pieces. We put symbols onto it all the time. Because our minds just aren't capable of handling the complexity of what's really there. You just can't hold it, so you have to simplify it. It's a method of making symbols.
And there must be some kind of thought of this is me, this is happening to me. It's just, must be this identification.
Well, the me is a symbol too. It's a changing symbol. The symbols are not necessarily fixed either. They can adapt and change. I mean, to give an idea, the chair. Now that is a symbol. And if you just take the word chair like that, one will bring up some sort of idea, symbol. But there are 1,000 different types of chairs. They all come under the same heading. And we have a sort of range of symbols which we can adapt to those, and it fits. I mean, part of it is the form, part of it is the use, part of it is the location where they're found, things like that. Symbols even go further. We group things, make symbols, and we identify things out of a whole mass of other things. for instance, you see a tree and you identify a tree out of the forest. Why do you identify that particularly as the tree? It's just our way of making symbols to identify things so that we can grab hold of the situation and see it in terms of cause and effect.
You don't need to try to assemble it, but just to realize that it's just
realize what one's doing all the time. Realize it. If it's something internal, like an emotional state, then look at that. The thing is, one mustn't dismiss it by saying, "Oh, it's that," "Oh, it's greed." That's no use. One must look at it as it is inside. And see the phenomenon, and see just the way it is, regardless of what one calls it. These symbols are very important. It can be seen everywhere. In fact, sometimes the only things that are not symbols are direct sensations. Direct sensations. We can't put a symbol to them, we just know them, that's all. But in knowing them, we can't define them at all. Except as their nature. Like if we see the colour red, we know that perfectly well. But how are we going to define it as red? I mean, if you want to tell somebody else what that colour is, if you use the name red, all you're doing is referring to that person's experience of that. And you don't know what they experience, so it's the same you do or not. I mean, there's no way of knowing. You can't know how another person experiences it.
So the symbol is a way of fixating something, or what is its function?
Simplifying. Simplifying, yes. We can say it's nature's way of enormous amount of information, understanding, knowledge within a very limited brain or mind. We have to group, and then we can deal with just that group. We don't need to think what it is and how complex it is or what's in it. We've got the name for it, and that's enough.
So it covers the complexities.
Yeah. If you can name the devil, you've defeated him. In other words, you've been able to grab hold of it in some way. I think often it's the other way around. If you name the devil, he's defeated you.
I think so too sometimes. Because sometimes something to hold on to. Oh, this is right.
Very difficult. Sanya. Symbol. When look at the citta, what comes out that I can see clearly is only sankhara. And I think it would take some more subtle samadhi in order to watch it. The other three.
The watching of it, I don't think that's so difficult. But what is difficult is to distinguish what's what. To distinguish what is sankhara, what is sanya, what is vinyasa. This is difficult. Because it's changing rapidly. And again, it's more like a whirlpool than anything else. And to actually see what these things are, you can see them, you know them, just look inside and they're there. You don't know what you're looking at. And it needs a lot of work to be able to distinguish these things.
How would you define sankhara? Because there seem to be different definitions.
Monkey inside your heart, that's sankhara.
I've had different definitions. Dispute about it.
The best definition of it is in the Sankhara Khanda. This is the Khandas and the Khandas. the khandhas put together what is put together. They're always building things up, making up things. Thai is pung tang, which is what it means sort of decorating, and you think of a person, and then immediately you associate that person with a location. And you associate the location and the person with the time you were there. It was something that they said. And only get some knowledge about them. It's building up, all the time, building. That's about that one subject.
Association something.
Yes. I mean, it pulls in things from all over the place. Sankhara does, particularly from memory.
Yes.
You can pull it in from memory, you can pull it in from sensation, and add it to what's already there.
Or the karma?
Well, karma will be, what you get is mainly karma results there. It's the actual karma, there's volition. Then there's the doing of something. And usually that comes up from an emotional basis. I want, I don't want. Some reaction takes place. For instance, if one thinks about the person and then something they said, and then some hatred comes up because one didn't like it. Well, there the thought has come up with hatred, which is karma. It's karma. If it's a mere thinking about the person, there's probably karma in that. It's weak. Karma is mainly produced by the sankhara. This is important because sanya is much more resultant. Vijnana is more a resultant thing. The feeling Vedana is resultant. For Vedana often gives one the tone to take towards whatever it is that's being thought about. For instance, unpleasant feeling, I don't like. Pleasant feeling, I like. Feeling is the touchstone, the one that you test with, find out, do I like, don't I like, is this good for me or bad for me, whatever it is. It's the touchstone, the testing. Khandhas are very important. And they are probably the best field with most people for investigation. To see them, see how they work together and associate together.
That's fun.
Yeah. The body is interesting too. They divide body up in various ways. 4 elements is probably the main one. And when we talk about 4 elements, earth, water, fire, air, we can analyze it in that way and see it in that way. But in fact, these 4 are just symbols. If you look externally, you can never find an earth element. Apart from the mother, that's obvious. But the earth element is an element. You can't really find it at all. Nor can you find air, water, fire. You can't find it. And so what we're left with really is that these things are a method of analyzing material. But in fact, it requires the mind to do it. And you have to think about it. When the mind's doing it, the mind talks about earth, water, fire and air, but these are symbols also which you just apply to them.
It's just different sensations, really.
Yes.
I mean, and the sensations are classified.
Yes.
There's nothing really.
But the thing is, what one has to see here is that's quite true. And really we finally can't find these elements at all. But when one's looking at the body, it is useful to think in terms of the elements. For some people anyway. In other words, what we're dealing with here is a method. It's method all the time. And really the whole of Buddhist Sasana is method. When you're dealing with the body, to see this body as what it is. It's not me, it's not mine. It's not such a wonderful thing as all that. One way is to examine the elements. Just see, well, wherever it is, just these elements. Just the 45. And that's one method. Another method is to see the loathsomeness. Of course, ultimately there's no loathsomeness at all. It's just material. In the same way, this isn't really loathsome at all. It's neither loathsome nor beautiful. Just as it is, that's it. But when we're practically trying to see the nature of the body and realize its nature, it's useful to think in terms of it being loathsome. So we have to use these methods.
I always found interesting, I just read that you not just do it with yourself, but you also take other bodies, animals and other human beings.
Yeah, of course.
It's the same when you go through their bodies in the same way.
Yeah.
Do you realize that all the time?
That says in the Satipatthana Sutta, you do it there and you do it here as well. And then you apply what's there to here.
Just skins. Look, you don't have me. What's your finger?
He's a biologist. That's why.
Oh, yeah. I don't know whether that helps or not. It's like they say doctors usually have much more difficulty in seeing the nature of the body. Because the doctor automatically, he sees it so much, his kilesas have found a defense against what he sees there. And he's got to get through that defense if he wants to really understand the body. And that's not easy.
That's why all the doctors and nurses, they did learn very good about their bodies, but unfortunately not.
What sort of defense do you
need? Well, like this, I mean, the doctor deals with bodies, illnesses, the mechanism of it, the way it works, all that stuff. The mechanic deals with a car, the way it works, the mechanism and so on.
And feeling is not
and it's the same sort of thing. With him there's no sort of emotional state here. The only emotion is, I see the way they've done it there. It interests him. That sort of thing. And you see in the body, and as long as the doctor sees some sort of strange kidney out of shape or something, and he's interested in straight away.
That's how I found it when I had to cut open animals. I would see, I can't do this. And then I had to sit in front of it and just concentrate and I would do it. And all the feelings had gone. It just made the concentration and interest would come and then there was seeing or feeling.
So the thing is, when that happens for a time, there's a big block, so the barrier, the chitta. Chitta doesn't get into the chitta. And the thing is, the body then is instead of seeing it in nature, one's got a symbol again. Made it into a symbol. That symbol is heaven. Kilesas got all sorts of for most people, you can say the kilesas are what the person is. That is a person. That's why kilesas are so powerful, because they use the human mind. It's only when we start doing practice and we get calm, for instance samādhi, it sets the kilesas to rest. It makes them rest. When they rest, what is kilesas and what is not kilesas starts becoming more apparent. And that time the kilesas can be seen, so one can see the difference between the states and kilesas there when they're not there. But one has to be very cautious because some of them may just trick you and think that they're seeing it, and it's not.
I think in the field of emotions I get often very puzzled. What is the khandha?
Yeah.
And what is the kilesa?
Yeah.
I don't find very tricky. I think they also mix up. I think they mix easily, and then it looks like one
Kilesas
thing.
and the khandhas.
Kilesa and emotion, the emotion khandha.
Oh, I see,
The khandha which is the emotion, or the emotion which is the khandha, and the
very easy to
kilesa.
get muddled with these.
And I think they somehow mix
Yes.
out.
Well, the thing is that
behind the emotion.
That's right.
the kilesas grab hold of the emotions as being one of their main tools.
Yeah.
And because of that, the emotions and the kilesas are often identified. In fact, they are practically identical. But not all. Even when one can see the kilesas as separate from the chitta at other times, normally there will still be some kilesas there, kilesas moha. Because if there weren't, that would be nibbana. And the only times that a person gets free from the kilesas normally are in deep sleep, dreamless sleep that is, and in apana samadhi, I think there the kilesas are. So in apana samadhi there's just knowing. Because there's just knowing, it's not a state you can do much with at that time.
Because the sense of I disappears completely. In that moment, that's why. That's the last step.
You can't really have wisdom at the time of apana samadhi. It's gone beyond that. But when you come out from that, the aftertaste is there and the kilesas are very weak. And because they're weak, their wisdom can get to work very effectively. If there's luck to do it, it's difficult to do it.
Indeed.
Important too when one's doing the practice to review every now and then. Why are we doing it? What for? See the purpose. That's quite a good way of, if one develops wisdom, to go through some logic to come to a conclusion about something, especially with oneself. And you see the truth of that in the logic, but you can't feel it. You often have to go over it time after time, see that path, time after time. I mean, for example, if you want to realize the nature of sound, you listen to a sound and you know that it's just vibration externally, vibration in your ear. But when it gets into the inside, it becomes nervous, nervous impulses, which are not the same as sound at all. Quite different. When it becomes nervous pulses like that, it's no longer sound. And then when it gets to the brain, we get this peculiar thing which we call sound. What's out there isn't sound at all, vibration, but we can't realize it. We can't realize it's all inside. So if one can't realize it, the thing is to go through the logic. If that's mechanical, it gets inside, it goes through like this. And then you try to realize this sound's all inside me. Particularly it's very useful when you get the pop music going in the village and you try to do practice. There's a time when you can use that sound. Last night it was going a bit. There's a film, I think.
Used to be the sound of the rat scratching inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, crash.
It's a useful method that to go through if you've got a thing that follows a logical train like that sound, and you still can't see it, then follow the train again, follow it over and over again like that, until you begin to see it and realize that it's internal. It's almost as though after time the mind sort of switches over and it sees it as being internal.
So this is the way to pick up the sound. You said that the Buddha said that the sound is the sound of beginner.
Yes. If you're doing a practice like Anapana, it sounds difficult to get in so well. It goes right in. Particularly when you get to that level where the mind's subtle and sounds, it's almost as though they're amplified. And then it goes in a little more sharp.
But the jumping sound of the rat too much, right? To the tin roof.
Well, the thing is, when a sudden sound comes like that, automatically one goes into one's normal mode of hearing and thinking. And because of that, you can't suddenly see it from inside then. Because one's caught unawares. But if the sound persists, then you can use that and get inside. Same with sight, same with any other sense. They all work in much the same way.